Hello, and welcome to some development stories for Rock-afire Replay. I thought it was worth just, for once, going over a few versions of the game and talking about a few stories about the development of this game, since I really haven't posted much on it outside of if you were there to witness its development originally. For anyone who doesn't know, Rock-afire Replay was a game I first released with this version here on August 24th of 2020. It was just after COVID hit. Everyone was incredibly bored, and I had been in the Rock-afire slash animatronics community for a while. I was there since 2016, but I'd never interacted directly with the fandom. And of course, I've been a FNAF fan since the start of the original game. And I, at one point during the summer, and this had been throughout those years of me being in the fandom, I was like, it's annoying that there's not a lot of footage of these characters. I love all the show tapes. I love seeing the characters perform, but I can't watch every single show tape with all the characters performing, all in order. I was annoyed by footage of characters and full shows, just focusing on one character. They'd be like showing one character and looking around at him and ignoring the entire rest of the stage. It was a lot of annoyances with me, and during that summer, I was just like, you know what? Why don't I had tried modeling Billy Bob a few times before. I was like, why don't I try fully modeling him? Really just spend all my time and effort to make him. I made him in about a week. And then I was like, let me throw him in Unity and just make a simple little game where you can press, let's see, these buttons right here. I'm going to figure out, whoa, wrong button. I'm going to figure out all of his movements and just add the animations together, and hopefully Unity and which way it animates things would not break it. And then I made this short little demo. It's literally just this. You just can hit some keys and he moves around, and this was like absolutely mind-blowing to me when I had done this, because I wasn't sure if it was gonna work, and I was like, oh my god, I can make a Billy Bob that animates through keys. Could I continue this forward and get him to record stuff? And so I had posted this in a Discord server that I had randomly joined. I will note, around 2020 at least, the fandom was incredibly small in terms of who you could interact with. I think there was a lot of fans, but it was not a community of people you could talk to. In my experience, it was just a lot of people on Instagram. That's where a lot of people are on. I don't know why a fandom decided to evolve around Instagram, somewhere on Facebook. I guess just because it's all older people back then, but I don't know. There was the forums, which had just by 2020 had been dying. There wasn't really any activity, and YouTube videos, and that's about it. So I joined the biggest Discord server I could at the time, which was called Pizza Time Network, and I had posted a few pictures of this Billy Bob in progress, but no one really cared. I don't think really. I've looked back at the chats to gain my memory over time. Generally, just people were just like, oh, that's cool, Billy Bob model. At the time, people weren't necessarily interested in the art, or in fan art, I would suppose. They were just, excited about the brand and such. And then I posted this demo, and I remember the hype being completely immediate, because one of the immediate novelties is that people did not really understand how the Rock-afire animatronics worked. Nowadays, this is all very thoroughly understood, but like back then, most random people you would meet probably still thought they ran on electricity and not pneumatics. They didn't understand how each movement worked. They couldn't tell you what every movement each animatronic had. So this little program right here was like, whoa, I can kind of fake move Billy Bob around. And it was very educational to show like what he could do. Which one's his foot pedal? He should have the foot pedal here it is. It's this one. I was just waiting for the foot pedal. So like that's one of the cool things. A lot of people didn't know he had a foot pedal. And so it was such a neat little release in that tiny little Discord server that immediately within the same day I made a V2 where I just churned for like hours, and made a version where you could move him and make minimal recordings. Alright, here is basically the second build. This is version 2.1, but that was released like a minute after version 2. This is where we introduce the record button, and this is where the first show tape happens. Of course, it is of the infamous song I Ain't Gay that Aaron Fector had already done for Billy Bob. It was going to be the first one that people wanted to hand program, so they had it for themselves. So that was the first video on this one. It was very simple because there was no way to add audio. You had to sync it yourself. I believe you just hit record. Oh, you could add a WAV file, so I actually did. I don't remember exactly the timeline, but yes, I did actually add WAV files. It might have been version 2 that I didn't have that yet. So you could open a WAV, and I think you just start anyways. No, you can't. So you could open a WAV and play to it. I believe we can play files. I don't have any here. Yeah, that'll be fine. So I don't have any here. I don't want to get a billion copyrighted songs because that's all the people did was copyrighted songs. But once this version came out, the server was definitely starting to roll with wanting to make as many show tapes as possible. That immediacy of what I had done, of just throwing a Billy Bob mech in and making a way to make just a show tape with him, as bare bones as it gets. I made the model in a week and the rest of it in a day, immediately drew people in. And that's sort of the sometimes the philosophy I have with making new projects is I've learned from this, and I now just want to, throw something out there as soon as possible. And you see that with my other projects, either on this channel or other simulators that will come after Rock-afire Replay. I would just throw something out there and see what people thought of it. And there was a pretty good amount of fan shows that came out. I have a list. I'll have this on screen. There is a list that I saved every single fan show that was available because I want to, again, kind of set the stage here. At this time, the only other, and I guess I'll start moving Billy Bob to have some visuals here. The only other simulator at this time was one for if you had a physical bot. And this is very important to how people programmed. It was a simulator that you could manually not manually, you could go back in like a timeline and edit and add, movements and such. But it was a blind programmer. It was, you had a bot on hand, but you would program in this show, upload it to the bot, and the bot would move. And most people don't have a bot, so people would get up with friends who had bots. They would program a show, ask them to play it. They would play it, and that would mostly be it. And you would not know what it was going to look like until it played. You kind of just had to go off instinct. And of course, as you played with the bot, you would learn more about what you probably need to do as you watch performances go on. Though that was also sometimes a luxury, and also the program was not free. And there was a method of sharing fan shows, but again, if you didn't have a bot, you didn't have a reason to do any sort of fan show, so you mostly just saw them on YouTube and such. So I would consider that a blind programmer, and that this one was considered a live programmer. And people, when they started programming with this little Billy Bob, were immediately, they didn't like it. They were like, oh, I have to react in real time and have to say it on key, and I can't go backwards and edit it, I have to get it just right. And I was just like, well, I mean, that's how it works. That's how creative engineering had to do it. They did have the opportunity to go back and, delete things and redo it, though, in this stage of just trying to quickly throw this out, you could only add to a recording. But I was like, hey, you can just start with one thing at a time. Just listen to the music a few times, do the eyes and do the body, to the general music. And once you've heard this 500 times, trying to do all the movements, do the mouth last, and that will be when you kind of can expect when all the voices are going to come in. You're not going to have the mouth be delayed, and finish your recording. Some people kind of wrote it off. It was not too many people. I would say about 20-30 people total were here for this kind of early few months of replay. I'd say about 2 or 3 were just like, I've tried it once. I don't want a live program. I want to stick to my blind programming. This is how I'm used to it, which was funny to see. Most people loved it. And again, as I mentioned, there was the list of all the shows. I had all of them saved. I have 2 variations of it. This is because the show tape format did change after version 1.3. Everything's on here, actually, except the I Ain't Gay song. That's actually the only thing that's not been saved. I don't think we ever had a download of it. But it was fun. Basically, and by this point in the server, I had convinced the admins to let me have my own channel for this project. I think I was just doing it in a general channel. And once it had gained so much traction, just exclusively being released in this server, they threw me in a Rock-afire replay channel and a replay downloads one. So it was one exclusively for downloads, because my immediate thing, I wasn't as open source and free as I was now. I was still young and capitalistic in a way. I wouldn't say I was perfect at it, but this was one of the early moments where I was like, I want these things to be shared for free. I don't want people posting videos of this, one, to keep away from Aaron at the time, but also so we could archive and share around and have fun with it. And also because it was open format, people were trying to collaborate with each other. It happened a few times, especially as we get into later things where there's more characters and lights, and I'll move to the next version in a second, where it's a little more interesting to look at. But people were starting to collaborate as well, where they would, do Billy Bob's, movements up here and there, and then they would send it to the next person, and then they would finish it off. That was kind of something that had been done in the blind programming days as well. As far as I understood, I was coming into this brand new and learning about all this at the time. But that was a cool feature here, and that'll be something that you'll see get added on pretty quickly, is a way to merge show tapes. If you've ever played one of these simulator games and you've noticed that there's a button to merge show tapes, it came from this. Someone had mentioned it extremely early on, and they were like, I don't want to wait for the other person to finish their programming for me to do mine. I should be able to work on a character, the other person work on their character, and then we combine our show tapes together. And I was like, that's so cool. I'm going to go add that. So it was a lot of fun, free-flowing ideas at this time. I cannot state how fun this was. But let's get to the next version where this was literally still day one we're witnessing right here. Let's skip a few days or maybe a week later. Alright, and here's version alpha 0.4. I always style the way I version these based off Minecraft with its alpha, beta, whatnot. I always wanted to call it alpha so people knew not to expect anything crazy from this. I will also note, I think for a good chunk of the game's life, the EXE is called Rock-afire VR. I was wanting to get into VR within this time, and the very early initial plan when I created the Unity project for it was like, oh, I'd love to have the Rock-afire in VR where I can just sit in the showroom and glance and watch them. And I still think that is the best possible way to do it. I know Aaron is trying to, there's possibly a simulator he's working on right now that's going to try to do it in VR and just focus on like a good showbiz experience. Glad that that's like a priority, because I still think that's great. I never got to have VR support for replay. I did for later versions like Fazanum and I guess Reel to Reel, but yeah, replay never got to initially have that. But this is version 0.4. I think is the first point that the actual logo is made. I don't know when I called it Rock-afire Replay. I think it must have been at this point. I don't think I had a name for it necessarily before. We'll start the show, and I'll need to... So this is the first version where things start coming together. This was still probably a week into it. But, oh yeah, here's where all the all the controls came in, my immediate priority, as with anything in these early parts, was filmability, I guess, you know. That's why there is a really, really good zoom feature. I wanted people to have full control of the camera at all times of the scroll wheel. I still think that that's a necessity in all of my games going forward, no matter what they are. I think having a zoomable FOV is just a good thing to put on the scroll wheel. But as you can see at this point, we were beginning to lay out the stage. This was the first time me in the community, again, only about 20 people. They swapped in and out who was, giving priority of helping me out. But we were kind of coming together, and we're like, we need to start figuring out how we would even make this, because now everyone's starting to realize, oh man, we are in love with this idea of a simulator. Can we get a full Rock-afire show? And that was when I started realizing, oh my god, if this really is going to work out in the end, we don't have to rely on community heads who own shows to do the heavy lifting of, when we do song requests, they have to, post a video about it or doing fan shows or whatnot. It's now not, funneled into, will this one person go and film their show? And most people don't even have a full show. So it was like, oh my god, we could put a Rock-afire in everybody's household, all the fans could have a full show. And we did eventually get there a long time from now. But, even just the fun of having a character was mind-blowing. So as you can see in this release, we had plotted out the lights. This was the first big hurdle, was knowing like what the floodlights were and where they even went. This was the first time we were seeing the first bit charts kind of show up. Lots of stuff that, again, the community had no reason to look at, because the fans were just there to watch things. They were never a part of the mechanical process. It was only the few people who owned a bot that needed to deal with these things. But now everyone had to start learning if they wanted to help bring this to life and be accurate. We wanted to have it. That was always the method, was I want to build physical bots. I didn't want to just build the characters, fur and everything and call it a day and just throw whatever the general props are. I wanted to get it nitty and gritty and have a full show there. So yeah, by this time, Billy Bob does have a mask, I believe. No, we cannot control him yet. Oh wow, I had actually added a lot here. Oh wow, there was a lot of ambition already at this point. Oh, does he have... Oh, wow. This actually might be a little bit further on. This might be about 2 weeks in. I had already begun crafting the ideas of how this was going to work. This panel being here was a reference to the show selector. That's what it is. But it was also still in the roots of this being a VR game. That is, even until the end, even until like Fazanum's final release, 2 years from now, the entire game was built around being easy to use in VR, where you could just tap that with your finger and such. But it also gave a lot of tactility. There was zero UI. That was another thing. I liked it from Donkey Kong Country, had zero UI. That really inspired me. There was like a video that talked about it. And it inspired me. I was like, I want all my games to not have, no AI, no UI, and just be tactile. But it also helped it be, again, filming focused. I could have made a button where you just hide the UI so you can film, but I just like that kind of usefulness of, I can make it a VR compatible game and then I don't have to worry about, UI. And every single simulator going forward, including ones that do not share this engine, continue with that idea of the tactical show selector panel, which I think is cute. So, but yeah, at this point I was already getting ideas of playing segments, playing show tapes, which were at that point playlists of, I guess I had already implemented at this point, playlists of segments where you could click on a folder and it would play every segment in a row, which I thought was neat. Recording, I believe, let's see, clear movements. That was an immediate first request by people. Please let me delete my movements, and redoing it. Add to segments and merge segments. Here we go. By 0.4, we had merged segments together so people could share and collaborate. I don't think that's really done anymore. That was really a remnant of that time. I can't think of many collaborations off the top of my head for like shows that are posted on YouTube. And then the customization. That was the immediate thing, was, oh my god, we can have any ratio we want. We could customize it. And so yeah, my immediate thing was I love the beta looks of the characters, so of course I made a beta mask. Second beta, I think that there's no tangible difference here. That was a setup for when the fur was going to change, and then just a base mech. Because I always still wanted, even once we finally made a full costume, I wanted to preserve the ability for people to look at the mech and be educated on how it works. That was also another angle, was like, oh, I can educate people on this game. And you can see that when I eventually made Cheesypedia. In some other parts of this game, you're going to see there was a want for education, because I felt at the time, with the only site being showbizpizza.com, that was already at the time out of date by at least like 5 years, that hadn't been touched at all. There was no education in the community of what was going on. People just, when I joined that Discord server, I thought I had known everything about the Rock-afire and Chuck E. Cheese, only to discover people had been learning things, in the background and talking amongst each other and keeping databases of things away from the general public. If you wanted to just research these things, you just had to know people to know things. So I was learning to want this game to be helping with that. And again, like, people know how all the characters move and work nowadays. That was because I had to go through, when I added other characters, I had to go through hundreds of pictures, very blurry ones that were never intended to show the mechanisms and such, and piece these characters together one by one, because no one was willing to do that on their own. No one was willing to catalog these kind of things. And so when I was the first, people got to refine it later, and because these models are still a little crusty, but they were very accurate for the time. But yeah, this also, I had a trend of just wanting to add neat little things into the game. You'll see that later with the ticket system when we get to that. And also like the Showbiz carpet. That was a very fun early edition, was getting the Showbiz carpet down. So we'll move on to the next one. All right, now we enter 0.6, I think. This is not the first version with a flashlight. We're still in the dark. But this was the first time there was a full Showbiz Pizza to look around from. There has to be a flashlight. I'm surprised. Yeah, I guess flashlight must have came like immediately after this, because I really wanted... Yeah, none of the buttons. Also it's very laggy, the camera. There's some jittery here. There was a lot of bugs in these initial updates. But yeah, this was the first time there was kind of a Showbiz to look around in. This idea was eventually dropped for a custom location, and we'll get to that. But yeah, the initial idea was, I want to make a Showbiz, and you could walk around a Showbiz and all that stuff. I think I dropped it because I realized, I have to make all the signage, all the arcades and everything, and there wasn't enough footage and pictures at the time to know how to do that, so I dropped it eventually. But we can see that Billy Bob is now fully complete. He looks a little if you watch early show tape videos, his early model was the best we had ever seen at the time, but I really hated the face shape for him. His fur looks really nasty. But I mean, it was a complete Billy Bob. This was the first time you could boot up this game. Again, this is probably like mid-September. This was still like maybe 3 weeks after the initial build. People have been making a lot of show tapes by this point. And it was like, oh my god, here we got a first character. And this is also the introduction of the live show panel. As I began working on what to do, what's the best methods of working on this, I found out that there was a lot of things people wanted to do in the middle of a show, or to customize how their stage wants to look. And I didn't want them going through the menus, especially if the menu was already recording something. So we invented this. We can toggle the lights. Oh, this toggles everything. Oh, but that was also because I was a truther of, well, at least from what Aaron had said at the time, that Showbiz had played in pitch black darkness. I was like, I want to have shows be able to be played in pitch black darkness, and you just see the show lights. That's the true way to experience it, and I still believe that. So that was an immediate thing. Volume up and volume down. 3D sound as well. I believe, in the first few versions, sound was just played straight through the speakers, but then eventually I was like, well, the speakers are usually here and here on the stage. Why don't I make them real speakers in 3D space to give you that feel of the show? Because the shows were in stereo, and characters would only play on one speaker or the other, so it was closer to their talking voice. So I was like, oh, we definitely got to add that in. But people didn't like that, and they needed it for doing, YouTube show tape recording sometimes. I did have a Toggle 3D sound available. And then PSI was in a fun little thing because I wanted to, that's always been my thing, is I just like to add fun settings for people. People loved this, being able to control if the character was slower or faster, but it drove me insane sometimes because you'll watch some shows and people thought the highest possible PSI where they are just like almost just instantly moving to the next, position as appealing. And it drove me insane, and it almost made me want to remove the PSI limit many, many, many times because some people would record some of the worst PSI I have ever seen in my entire life. It was stupid. But also, I believe in this version, there was a secret, which I kept in, I think. Yes, I believe I just kept this in because it was neat. There was the negative PSI option, which negative PSI would let you see the inverse of the character's movements, so their mouth would always be open until it was closed, stuff like that. People really liked that too, and people would I remember sitting here too and just like spamming the button to make it go as fast as possible, because once the characters got jiggle bones, the really fast movements would cause the jiggle bones to freak out, and it was funny. I would leave stuff like that in, but yeah, the PSI button, some people's recordings really made me mad. Really made me mad sometimes, and especially when I added the way to customize each movement's PSI. And yeah, I don't know. I'm very particular about how an animatronic should look, especially this time in newer versions like Give Life, where I can have really complex jiggle bones on each character, where even fast movements look kind of normal. Here the fast movements would kind of give away it's a video game. There was no fur jiggling or anything. It was just bones, snapping into position, and it didn't look right to me. But yeah, let's see if we have any characters here, or character costumes. Yep, we got the second beta with the different fur, the mech, and Cosmeticless with the shells. Yep. So, man, it's just so fun seeing these early versions. But yeah, not much to say here. I think the community was still growing at this point. I don't think many, again, it was still only about 10, 20 people. It was not a lot of people who were seeing these early versions. I think once we got into the October versions where I was adding Mitzi and other stuff, people were then actively joining the Pizza Time Network server just to play my game, because again, it was not available anywhere. This was initially because at the time, Aaron was being harassed by the fandom unrightfully. He was absolutely being harassed, and it had made him become aggressive towards anybody, rightfully so. And so I was worried of posting anything about this in terms of he might take it down, and that's why in these early versions I told people, only share your shows in the server, make your videos unlisted, do not post anything to YouTube. I think like within 3 weeks or so, around the time this version came out, the first video was posted on YouTube, and people were freaking out, and I was freaking out, and I was like, oh god, Aaron's gonna find it, he's gonna shut it down and everything. But then the dust settled and nothing happened, and I was like, oh god, okay, well maybe it looks like no one's gonna tattle on me to Aaron yet. But people were still kind of like, what is this? Is this a real thing? A lot of people thought these simulators were real, and that it was like a real show they were watching. But others realized where it was, and they were like, where can we find this? And no one wanted to tell them where to find it. But people would talk around, and people were starting to join the server. I was talking about every little feature I was going to add, like literally everything. If you want to know the development of this game, it's not hiding. Every single microsecond of development has been cataloged. Every single decision I've made, every argument I made has been, cataloged with people. You can see exactly my development progress the whole way through. But at some point I did move to a third channel, which was just an updates channel, because now it was at the point that I think I was like a moderator in the server. Just for this little section, we had a little role that you had to join, because some people just wanted to be there for Chuck E. Cheese and stuff. And I was doing my own little Rock-afire thing in the corner. So you would get a role that would add you to these channels. And And so I could ping everybody in the news channel and say, "Here's the new update for today." It was almost daily. You could look at the release days. There's sometimes at least 3 releases a week where like major changes are happening. But I would still be in the trenches in the chat, talking with people constantly about what to do, what to add, how should I do this, how should I do that. It's so fun. That is my favorite way I want to make games now, and that's why all my games are all open source, immediately available the second I start working on it. I have some way of being able to talk with people about it, because I love just that immediate feedback of like, I just added Billy Bob's Cosmetics. Is there anything I should do next? Should I add more props? Should I add a new character? There was always this kind of consensus or vote on what to add next. And of course, people are always wanting the next character, or to have the current character fully, have all their cosmetics done. I think the immediate thing was add Looney Bird, of course, and finish Billy Bob's stage, which I think was the vibes at this time. So, but it was so fun. I love that community sense. So, either way, let's move to the next version here. All right, here's version 0.9.9. That's where we actually get a slightly more proper title screen. I always loved having fun with the title screens. As you'll see, the title screen will eventually shift to looking more like Team Fortress 2. I'll get into that when we see that. But this was kind of the start of the initial color scheme, which was yellow and white. And if you are someone who's been in the fandom for a bit, you may have remembered a show tape uploading channel. I forget what it's called. It's like just Rock-afire show tape or something. That would upload shows. It was deleted eventually. But it had this scheme of like the Rock-afire explosion as the logo, and then a yellow and white gradient. And if it was like the showbiz corporate voice shows, it'd be like a red gradient. That was run by me. I was the one trying to get good quality audio of the uploads of show tapes at the time. And this color scheme was kind of a continuation of that early scheme I had for what the Rock-afire should be colored like. All right, and we are in. Ooh, it's a little laggy. So, here it goes. It's going to be a little laggy. I'm running this on Linux now. It was never really meant for Linux. But I mean, Proton's doing pretty good with this. So, this was probably early to mid-October. I guess we'll see once we open the curtains, which we now have. We'll force the curtains open. Do we have a Mitzi? We do not. We do have a complete Billy Bob stage, though. Oh, and we have there's some fun things to talk about here. But yeah, this was the first start of a proper showbiz showroom. We had the prototype tables here. These were really fun to create the graphics for. I had to research this. I think only like a few stores ever got these, but as a fandom member at the time, we didn't know that. But it was cool to see like, whoa, there were like, tables that had the showbiz logos and all the characters on them, and it was all these fancy ones that like only a few fans had. So I added it to this. I tried recreating whatever, I think I had like floor plans from some sort of showbiz. It was like on a really horribly drawn piece of paper is all I remember was the photo I had for it. But as we can see, we're starting to flesh it out. We don't have the balcony here yet because I didn't know there was a balcony. Again, there was just a lot of things you just did not know back then. It was all a mystery. And I just threw some tables around to throw things on. I think we can pick these up. Yes. These, I guess I'll talk about these first. These are Midgen heads. These were the new Rock-afire characters. I will note, I don't think I ever properly gave credit for this. I think basically the Midgen head was not initially my model. This is my model, but it was extremely basically traced off of another fan model I had gotten. That was by Ben's Projects, I believe. I don't know. So this was all kind of just put here because I was like, well, I was trying to model it at the time. I was like, let me just throw the head in. And this is kind of the point where I was adding interactability outside of the showroom because I wanted people to be able to pick up and play with objects in the game. So this was kind of like a playable teaser. You could have a little Midgen head there, and then I think, yep, we have crouching now. We have the flashlight. We have the flashlights. We don't have flashlight size changes yet. But, yep, we can pick up the records now. That was kind of the payoff to having the records on the stage before. And it was just so cool. It felt like I wanted to give people, again, like to have their own show. This was kind of here to be like, look, you have your own Rock-afire record. Implication was eventually there'd be a player, I could throw this in, or throw it all the way over there, and you'd be able to play all the show tapes. It was supposed to be like an interactive medium for you to enjoy your fandom needs, instead of, again, like the Showbiz Pizza website or YouTube you'd watch these things on. You physically could tangibly look at these things, and I felt like that was more insight than you could get just reading something. You could physically see there were two sides to the little sheet here, and I was getting fandom members to give me like really high quality versions of certain textures and images, whatever they could find, stuff like that. So I don't know, those were the early implications back then. But yeah, we're getting to see more of a stage. I remember getting the curtain banners here were a little bit hard. Again, I was having to reach out to people, literally everyone in the fandom. I was reaching out to everybody, trying to get anything I could. This thing right here I got from just like a photo on Instagram. I hand carved out the texture myself and threw it on there. I was trying to find random scraps of images and just put them in my game so they could be used. And when we get to the other tree line, that'll be a cool thing to mention once we see that here. Like, yeah, the Smitty Super Service Station I got from a random photo, and then I found other photos of these signs and I stitched them into this one. As you can see, the quality difference is a little stark, but it was cool. I wanted the authenticity of having these things in high quality as possible and you getting to see them. As you can see, now we have Looney Bird, we have all the fire pit and everything, so things are starting to come together. Let's pull up. So yeah, I'm starting to clean up things. Oh yeah, you could change the player height in this. This was just to try to begin letting measurements be a little more accurate, but also to let people shrink down to like kid size, so they could, if they wanted to feel like a kid at Showbiz Pizza, they could be, really small. They can just do that with crouching. I think, yeah, just the forced curtains. That was a neat feature for programming. I didn't want people to immediately. I think probably in the first version we added curtains. People were like, "Oh, I don't have to like animate the curtains every time I start a show tape." So, next version, I immediately let you be able to force the curtains on, no matter if the show tape programs it or not. That was a lot of it. A lot of what's in this game would be, I would hear someone complain and be so like, by it, like, no, you're totally right, that I would add it the next version. Sometimes I would do versions an hour after I released something because someone made a complaint, and I'm like, let me just go throw that in real quick. It'll look better. But let's see, in this version, I've crossed out the change show. We never did get a change show version. I thought that was going to be, well, did we? No, yeah, because I eventually pivoted to, like, I think in like Fazanim you could change. No, I never really visited this. There were some things you could edit stages to reveal different characters, like showing Clunk on a stage, but I kind of eventually gravitated towards like shows being in different rooms, mostly because I realized there was a lag problem. And yeah, there were a lot of lag problems in this game. One other thing, yeah, another story thing I'll note is people in this fandom were here to watch videos of shows and talk. They were not, they weren't gamers. They weren't people who had PCs at all. They might just be doing stuff on their phones. It was a community not built around at all PC gaming. And I come in with this game that's like the hottest thing ever, and no one has a computer to play it on. And there was a lot of complaints about lag. All of the early shows you see have tons of lag. It's bad. And of course I also programmed it really bad, so as we get into the late October builds, there was a lot of issues, though not will be present here, but when you played shows. But this game kind of forced this entire community to get PCs. I would see people post in the chat like, oh my god, after all these times I've got my first PC, or I finally upgraded my 20-year-old PC, and now I get to play Rock-afire Replay. There was always a scramble to get a good computer to play this game, and people would be very jealous of people who had computers to play this if they were stuck around. Nowadays, most people in the fandom have a PC to make or play simulators or whatnot. That's way more standard now. But yeah, at the time, I was just like running into this fandom just like, hey, here's a big old PC game. Here's the best thing you've ever wanted to have. You gotta go buy like a $400 PC to get it now. So I don't know. That was just very neat that I was watching in real time and I knew this was happening, but I was just like, wow, it's happening in real time. That like this, I'm affecting this fandom, which was interesting to see. Here we got the mini stage. Oh yeah, with some of these, having to get this photo. So I think I had to like paint this part right here by myself by hand. I remember that. There was some parts of this I had to clean up by hand. But yeah, we're starting to get more into the educational aspect I mentioned. So I'm like trying to make mini pages on each show tape, because now I'm starting to realize that if this gets, what is this? Is this just a blank? Oh, what the? I carved like a little thing out here. I guess that was for other things. I don't know what this blank one was. I don't remember this. Huh. But I was realizing that people, again, I was so reactive sometimes. I would notice some people were getting like early into the fandom through this game, and I was like, oh no, people are going to join this and have no clue what's going on. You know, there was the worry of like, oh god, everyone's just going to start playing this, calling it a Five Nights at Freddy's game, and the first proper like gaming Let's Play video, I guess, on it, which never really materialized into other people playing it, did try to like have their thumbnail. It was what is it, Eludum or whatever the name is, the person that has the puppet logo is their thing. They made a video on it and they tried to show like the scary Billy Bob. Actually, probably right here. Where is it? Melted mask. The thumbnail was literally just like this melted mask, up front. So, I was always worried about it being showed as a Five Nights at Freddy's thing, but I wanted to make it educational. I wanted people going through this, not knowing what's happening, to go, oh, this is the abandoned Billy Bob that had his mask melted off. Very informational, I was hoping it would become its own, at the time, showbizpizza.com, where you wouldn't go to the website. You would go to Rock-afire Replay to learn all the cool stuff, which is funny because, I abandoned that later. But that was my only method of trying to get... I would learn all this neat info, trying to, make these stages and stuff, and being like, oh man, I have no outlet for properly documenting this. And so I was trying to document it in the game. But yeah, let's move... Oh, look, I already had the other characters shown here with all their little poses. I remember making all these, trying to get the fanciest little photos for each of them. But let's go to the next version, which I believe is closer to late October. All right, we are in 1.17. I'm going to have to move this screen around to really show the whole thing. This is this is kind of more of my worry at the time of people discovering this game, not knowing what it is, because it's just on Game Jolt. I think at this point, by October, I had already gotten over the videos being out, and I was like, all right, I'll just throw it on Game Jolt and see what people think. And so, definitely by this point, this is a fan work intended for educational use. All rights go to Chuck E. Cheese Entertainment and Creative Engineering. That was probably to, if Aaron saw it, be like, hey, look, it's just educational. I'm not trying to rip off anything, but also, for people playing it from FNAF. We got settings here. I don't think, the original settings screen. We got texture quality, screen resolution, animation playback. Originally the animatronics were hard coded. Oh, I could go off for hours about how this game was coded. The animatronics were, I think even the 60 FPS mode was kind of a hack. I didn't have any interpolation. It was just like, I ran the code and it updated which position the animations need to be in. There was no interpolation, no targeting or anything. I'm baffled that it took a while before I got rid of the system too, but this was the first point that the animatronics could move past 30 FPS. But it was a huge hit to performance because I also was learning programming for the first time. I had started learning how to program in March of that year. And it was August that I started the game, so I'm not even half a year into learning how programming works. I've been in game development for a while with non-programming languages like ClickTeam and some other stuff, but, at this point, I was just kind of trying my best. There is a FAQ. This was I had a little scrolling thing here, explaining, obvious issues. This was another thing I wanted to do at the time was have, like, an in-game manual. And it's at later points you will probably will be even in the files. There's a physical PDF manual that you can read that eventually turned out from this. I like the idea of having a game manual. And that's something I still carry to games today. I feel like if I ever get a game that's complex enough, I want, as you've seen with some of my prototype stuff like Min-Max, I believe, or New Imagination, I had some sort of like in-game wiki you could download, because I think this is interesting that, you know, if people have questions, just put it in the game, and as you update things, you can update the wiki in the game. And I think that's cool. That way, if I don't know, someone's internet cuts out, they still have access to learn things. I thought that was always a neat thing. So just trying to help people out here. Credits, info and fact checking, other private sources. Interesting. We'll get to this programming help thing here. This is why 1.17 was, hopefully I'll remember this after talking a bunch, but 1.17 was very important, but I want to talk about the little things prior to it. Closed alpha testers. These were all the people, so it wasn't about 20 people, it was about 10, 11, something. These were all the people who had played it in the server before it put on Game Jolt. I wanted to immortalize everybody saying thank you for being here, you know, as part of the closed alpha test. So that was actually the community for the first 2 months or so, through August and September, maybe mid-October. Then extras, I actually don't. This is when we changed show formats. It wasn't really anything that interesting. We just changed short show formats. I don't even remember why. And so I had a button that you could fix your show to go into later version. So if you do ever play an older version and you want to save your progress, you can use later versions to fix it. I wanted to skip ahead a little bit to 1.17 because this is where late October, early November was the craziest month for the development of this game, because again, that was when it went on Game Jolt. A lot of people were playing it now, a lot of people were giving feedback, and I was trying to be much more ambitious with the game. Oh, I didn't have the outside yet. That's interesting. We'll have to see in a later version the outside. But my new goal for this game was, I don't want to make an accurate showbiz, you know, that you walk around in. I want to make my own little thing that has showbiz references. This references the menu board with the light bulbs around it. In some photos I saw, you know, I would see photos of things and be like, that's neat, I'm gonna throw it in the game. You know, free interior detailing that I don't have to make my own texture for. But I wanted it to feel extravagant, because again, the main thing was, this is your own personal Rock-afire show. So I wanted to liven it up and be like, look at that, you got your own fancy little hallway, you can choose which one you want to go down. The hallways were also here's the freezing part, to let me load in the shows, because now it was very intense to load show tapes in now, or to load the shows in. This is lagging a lot. Oh my god. Whoa. Okay. But I always made sure the showrooms were extremely accurate. I wanted you to still feel that vibe, and now you have the balcony seating, and you can now click on the seats to sit in them. Main thing I always wanted was to feel that vibe of being in the dark showroom, sitting down. Again, I was someone who'd only went to Chuck E. Cheese once in my life. I think maybe twice. What I was told how showbiz was so enthralling. It was high quality. It sounded very fun. And so to recreate it and to sit down in these first few builds and be like, whoa, I'm sitting in the showroom, I'm watching from the intended view distance. You know, it's the exact darkness levels that we've never gotten even with fan shows. You know, it felt so magical. And the vibes were just immaculate. There's so much that was added. Oh, there was so much. Let's go ahead and force open the curtains. Oh, we had an FPS counter on here. That's interesting I did that. That was probably removed really quickly. I don't remember that being there. So yes, everything's getting more fleshed out. Lots of stories to tell here. First thing was that Rolf was added. I can't remember if people wanted Rolf. I think people wanted Rolf. Yeah. I wanted Rolf too because I wanted to make Earl. Earl was fun because we, again, didn't know much about Earl. So it was fun to, like, for the first time, figure out how he worked. And it was also good that Rolf had the same mech as Mitzi. So I literally just, probably within the same week, edited the arm, shrunk him down, and turned him into Mitzi, for their mix to be side by side. So we had gone from just 2 characters to 4 pretty quickly. Though, yeah, sadly, Rolf never ever got finished. He was always in this state, but people were begging me for me to make Rolf full, and I was always terrified because he was so complex. I mean, I've been modeling right now for 10 years. At the time, that was 5 years, I guess. And so I wasn't the best at fur. I mean, you can see with Billy Bob, yeah, he looks a little better in this version. I cleaned up his face a bit, but he doesn't look the best. Mitzi looks good in certain lighting. I had done a fancy thing with her fur, but nothing like what I do nowadays. So I was intimidated by Rolf and how fluffy he was, that I wasn't going to do him right. And I still think most people who've done simulators up to this point haven't really done him justice in terms of, like, if it's a render, yeah, he looks great. But in terms of in-game fur, he's not fluffy enough. He's always a weird color because he's supposed to be dark at the core of his fur, and the strands get lighter near the end. And it's hard to replicate that nicely. So I really avoided him for a long time. Though people also joked, there was a joke back then about Rolf feet. They just wanted me to add Rolf feet, and I would make jokes in some of the things where I'd be like, "Oh my God, guys, I added Rolf feet. You gotta go open the game up right now." Also, some of the builds I would not say what I was working on, because I work on things like within a few days and throw it out there. I would make him in a few days. There would be a lot of times, if you were in this community, I would drop a build, not tell you what was in it, and say there's a big surprise waiting. And just the absolute fun of seeing the first screenshot like a minute later of someone posting like Rolf or whatever and being like, oh my god, Rolf's in here, and the excitement, the first person to make a show tape with Rolf, it was kind of stuff like that. Oh, it was such a blast. Second interesting story were these trees. These were a request for Connor. I don't remember his last name. Started with an L or something. He was like one of the only people to own these trees, and I begged him. I remember I was like, please, you're the only one with these things. I have this game that you've never heard of. If you just give me photos of these, it'll be amazing. And he got me high quality photos of all these trees. And I think these are the only photos of these trees that are still around. If you have a Rock-afire simulator that you're in, this is the same texture you've used. All the textures I got for all of these trees, including this one too, these have all been from Connor. And I don't think a single other person has a set of these trees. So this is just now the canonical trees. It was funny that, like, what things I added and why I would add them from, because now we know every show was very different. Whatever I added now became kind of the, like, canonical, this is what a default Rock-afire show is. And a lot of these were all hand painted. These are technically, I think, like beta trees. They don't even belong on this stage, but they're the only ones that are around. So it's just like, yeah, we just use these now. And that's just become what it is, which is fun. Was when people were really enjoying having multiple characters. Like, once there was multiple characters, that's what got people extremely interested, because now each character could do their own songs, they could interact with each other. A lot of custom tapes were coming out now that were like, because like very early days, people wanted, I mean, some people did custom shows, but also people wanted to, like, recreate real Rock-afire shows so they could have their version of it, because we did not have access to official signals for at least 3 more years out. And so people were recreating shows, but come like October, people were starting to now get a hang of the characters, and they were wanting to post other custom show tapes. And you see I mean, I have a playlist of almost every single show tape, and it's like 1,000 for Rock-afire Replay so far. It started breaking out into people wanting to do custom shows, begging me for different character customizations. I'm sure I've added even more here at this point. Oh, we have like 10 stages now. Showbiz Campground. Oh, yeah, the Magic Stage. Oh, so many things to talk about. This picture was a nightmare to find. I am a magician at Google reverse image searching, and I will take 10 billion years to find photos. This one was a little easy. It took about 30 minutes. This one probably took about 30 minutes. He took about 8 hours, because I didn't even know which actor this was. I don't even remember what he was now. It took me an eternity to even have an idea of who he was, and then it took even longer to find it. But like, this took an eternity. I took a long time on certain things to that now everyone else can enjoy. But a related story on reverse image searching, I was the first person to find the FNAF 4 bed texture. I spent probably 4 days straight on that, reverse image searching every single quilt. I handmade the original bed texture myself by hand to try to like see if people could find it. It was a whole endeavor, and I found that stock photo after 4 days, and now everyone has it. It was some quilt that was sold on Etsy. I still want to find that quilt. Thankfully, even to this day, after I posted that on the FNAF Reddit and showed everyone, I was like, hey, this is a real quilt you can buy. No one was ever interested in, maybe I should be the one to buy that quilt. So one day I want to go back and try to find that quilt. That would be amazing if I could, like, have that quilt one day. I don't know if it was a one-to-one or if it was a mass-produced one, but it'd just be kind of sick. So many little memories. Oh, yeah, the first... Chuck E. Cheese, please don't sue me. This is a Rock-afire video. There's a little bit of Chuck E. Cheese in here. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. I can't talk about any of the Chuck E. Cheese stuff. I don't want to get sued again. Hannah Banana. Oh man, there was the first time we got to have like international shows in here. I never made a Hannah Banana character, but people did later. Let's see. Oh, and this was a fun little thing. Again, things you would miss if you've never played this like while it was coming out. I was creating custom stages for, again, like this is your own personal little Rock-afire. I was creating custom stages for each character. I think I just done it for each one. So when people programmed the character, they just had like all the essential lights with them and just a fun little area to program in, because it sometimes felt a little miserable being alone on the main stage with them. So, and if they just wanted to do single character songs, that was like what I was seeing. I was seeing people like posting, animations with just the individual characters, and I'd be like, oh man, you're not going to program anybody else? I was like, well, maybe I should help them out and make single character stages so they can just have this, and then people started using them. Though these did fall out, like these weren't around for a lot longer. I don't think they might have lasted till the last version, but like in later simulators, I gave up on this idea. But it was so fun just kind of throwing things out there, seeing what stuck, and being like, do you guys like this, stuff like that. It was so fun. And this is this point where I got rid of the show thing, because now shows were in different rooms, and we'll get to that. We also had smooth cam on. I'm surprised it took this long to get to smooth cam. This was the cinematic experience. People wanted to be more cinematic, and so I gave them the smooth cam. This is stuck around in every other simulator. Most people use smooth cam nowadays. In Give Life is basically, the sequel to this initial simulator engine that I used for like 4 years. I make all of those now with like keystrokes. You hit like the R key and it turns on smooth cam. I wanted to be more accessible now, but then it was just turn it on. There's also the VHS filter. This was the first time I was experimenting with filters, which will come up probably in the next version. This was again just little things. I was just like, oh, people are thinking these animatronics are real. Why don't I add a filter where people can program them and pretend it's like an 80s, found footage, whatever. I think that was so fun. So the next thing is, oh yes, I added Fats, and he was a little secret Easter egg. I loved adding little secret Easter eggs. Like, I just added him here one day and didn't tell anybody until someone found him. But this is one of the main events of this era. Again, I just loved taking random photos and posters and throwing them on the walls, just giving people stuff to stare at. I wanted this game by this point to, again, be your personal Rock-afire show, but also your own little kind of haven you stayed around in. And so I had to think of ways I had to keep people interested in sticking around. So I created this little lounge room, and this had a video archive in it, so I could watch a commercial.
Appearing tonight on 3 stages at Showbiz Pizza Place, the Rock-afire.
Look at that, I had a little time bar. You couldn't click on it yet, but you could speed it up if you wanted, like a loop, stuff like that. This was, again, more of the educational aspect, more of the wanting to keep people in, and staying around. Oh, just, yeah, like, even like super long videos, like this like 20-minute promo that wanted it to become its own little thing. People loved this room. People reminisce sometimes about like this room because I removed it later on when I wanted things a little different. People still reminisce about this because again, a lot of people might not have ever watched absolutely every video there was or researched every little thing there was. So when they wanted to explore my game, they would learn about these things too. So I don't know, because this room doesn't exist in a real showbiz. It's supposed to be just a tech closet back here. So it was just cool, like, adding this one day. Oh, so fun. So fun. The other thing was the prize counter. I was throwing so many ideas out. A lot of them were really good. I wanted to just have so much fun. I was like, I made this random simulator. How could I gamify this? I was throwing just fun stuff at the wall. And I was like, well, I have all these cool props that I love have people like, play around with in my little sandbox. But I'm adding too many. I feel like I don't want to give them everything at the start. I want to have people kind of earn it. So came the ticket system. This was also a big part of Fazanum later on. That one I really heavily focused on the ticket system. But hear how it worked if you don't know, because I think maybe even certain mods don't have tickets anymore. I don't know if any mods even focus or even use tickets because it's still in the base game. You would program shows. You would not watch shows. You would program shows. And as you programmed, and I had some like tweaks to make you not be able to cheat it as easily, it would just add to your ticket counter. And then you could go and buy a thing. I could buy this Fats puzzle. I could click on food and, whatever, one of these categories, and it would spawn on the desk. And then I could spawn as many as I wanted and play with them. Like the slide puzzle was actually interactive. You could click on each tile and actually play the puzzle. And it was a few things. It was, again, a way to gamify it. It was a way to get people who didn't want to program, because, there was, again, just little worries like, man, there might be people who, once we have so many shows out there, they're just going to boot this game up and play shows and never learn them. So I wanted to entice them with, like, you want a pizza slice model, you gotta make a show first, and then you can have the pizza slice. But also, people were customizing their show with it. And sadly, I didn't have a way to like have these like save positions, but like this floodlight, this light right here, these would work. You could buy this light and plop it down in the showroom, and when you recorded your show, it was gonna light it up differently. And people like that idea of having, their own kind of show. So yeah, I don't know, it was just so fun. I love the ticket system. Oh, I want to bring it back for Give Life whenever I have a chance to add it, possibly. Because, I don't know, it was like the perfect gamification. People really liked it. And it was always fun as people were like gaining tickets, trying to chase how many they had and give them more items to buy. I started out with just a few items to buy. But over time, I really had to like throw items at them to keep up with their ticket count. And also these rotated daily. So it was always a random selection of tickets. And also, to mimic the showbiz experience, you were a kid, you played games, and you got tickets. So you played my game, and you got tickets, and you got to buy them at a prize counter. I just thought it was the perfect idea for this. Like, that's how you knock it out of the park. You make it like the original experience in your new game. And this trash was so you could throw props in the trash and delete them. So, I don't know. This version of the game was just so special. And it was really just, I don't know, it was that perfect essence of what I wanted the game to be. And it was always like that. But this was where it was really starting to form into a game and not just a test or a simulator. And then we'll go over, I loved experimenting with fun lighting and stuff. This is why I would make rooms like this. I just love lighting. We're going to load in and lag for like 5 seconds. We're going to, load into the other room. This is, by mid-November, I'd already made another animatronic show of the Midgens, the ones I teased before. This room is based off, oh man, I forgot what the name of it was. Whatever all the new Rock-afires were at, I based it off this. We had this custom artwork made. of all the little birds. I got my partner to make this. I was like, I want a custom wallpaper. I want it to be every single weird bird character or like prop character like the frog. I just wanted to like add some fun fan art for the community to have. And it also features Balloony Bird, which is a fan character. I don't even remember who made it, but people liked Balloony Bird at the time. So I was like, oh, I'll have Looney Bird and Balloony Bird. So, but I still think this is an amazing piece, just like having every single bird that appeared in the Rock-afire present, and then the squirrel and the frog. I think it's still a very cute wallpaper. So, but yeah, this is the first time we got the new Rock-afire. This was so interesting to program. People, I don't remember, really cared for the new Rock-afire too much because, you know, they're not fun to program because they're all the same bot. But it was a fun, like, difference. If you didn't want to be programming Rock-afire shows, you could program new Rock-afire shows. And it was something we had a lot less content on. You know, there wasn't a lot showing how the new Rock-afire worked. So, again, was cool to, you know, figure out how they worked and everything. I think... Oh, this is before I added the other hallways. You couldn't go around and see the other side of these swivel doors yet. It was annoying trying to program the, like, turntable and stuff. Again, I was still just learning how to code, so I could do this easily nowadays, but oh my god, I was struggling. And Unity sucks. That's why I moved to Godot. Unity really sucks at basically everything. I think everyone should move off Unity. If you're making a new simulator, you should be in Godot right now. It will help you in the long run, and it will run faster and better. But yeah, speaking of Unity, the reason 1.17, because now that I'm done talking about all this, the reason 1.17 was so special was because, again, the game was very laggy. The main reason for this was my horrendous coding system that animated each animatronic. And I had a thing where if I added a new robot, it would lag the game so badly. It was unplayable on certain people's computers. I managed, because I mean, this is still the same computer I used to make this game. I was like, y'all don't have good enough PCs. I have a beefy PC. This is running fine for me. You know, but even I was starting to feel the hit once I added Mitzi. And I was like, ugh. And I had a friend who was, again, credited in that thing, that just, like, added, like, I think it was just caching to, you know, the character animations, whatever it was. I don't remember, because I don't even remember how horrific my system worked. But they added a way to, like, just improve a little bit of the performance. And this version made such a difference. It was mind-blowing. Some people who were getting like 1 frame per second were getting 60 FPS now, playing these characters. And this was like the point that, like, because like really right before this version, I was adding all these great features, but I was really like locking certain people completely out of this version, and they were playing older versions just to do anything, you know. But they were bummed that they couldn't play this, and I felt really bad for them. And this was kind of the point where that didn't become an issue anymore, and now everyone was on a level playing field. So this version was mid-November, I believe. You can go look at the Cheesypedia article. I wrote the entire article for the Rock-afire replay section, where I really delve into what each version did and what the exact timing of it was, because I did a bunch of research. But yeah, like mid-November, somewhere around there. I think the timing of this is important, because this game only lasted a few months. Again, if you've never heard of this game, I guess, spoilers as I continue this story. Yeah, it only lasted a few months, so this was the halfway point of its development. And I guess while we're still in this version, we'll mention what else happened in October. As I continue this kind of story within the fandom as we were experiencing it, of course, you know, people were posting shows constantly now. And it was getting a lot of traction, and Aaron had still not noticed, which is surprising. Everyone was keeping this secret under his nose for multiple months. Again, just because at the time, people didn't like Aaron. He was being harassed unjustly, but it was still surprising that no one, because some people really liked Aaron and hated the fandom, and they would be willing to do anything to, I don't know, like tattle, I guess. And just, yeah, no one had told him. Not a single person had told him this gigantic project. Up to this point right now, the creator of the Rock-afire did not know that this was happening. And in the background, apparently, as he has claimed, that this had started in April of 2020, someone else had been making a simulator game. I think it was just called the Rock-afire Simulator. And in the middle of, posting, I guess it was a little bit earlier than this because this is mid-November, so it was end of October, a little bit earlier in this version. Aaron posts a Kickstarter video on this simulator, and he's like, hey, we've been working on this for months. This is the first time we're having a digital Rock-afire. Come pledge support, and we will be able to make this the future. Everyone will be able to have a Rock-afire in their homes. Good on the person who was making it, but sadly, it was just a poor showing of a animatable Billy Bob mask with a mouth, and you couldn't move or do anything. It was less than the first version of the game I had created in a week, and it had apparently been in development since April, like 6 months in development. And this was the day that Aaron had learned that Rock-afire Replay existed, because all of the comments immediately were clowning, again, sadly, but they were clowning on him, being like, oh my god, this free game has been developed in just 2 months, and it's already, look how far it is. It's already got multiple characters, it's got an entire stage, multiple costumes, and you're asking us to give you money, for this game. And his comments during that day were all in the server, witnessing, again, no one in the server commenting these, just people who are now finally speaking out about this game, because now it's impossible to hide it now that Aaron's making his own, saying all this. And Aaron's first comment is like, what do you mean there's another simulator? What are you talking about? You're just lying to me, or whatever. And then he starts we're waiting minutes on end, and all of a sudden his next comment is just like, I don't know whose project this is or what's going on, but if they want to get in contact with me, we could make this simulator, the one I'm kickstarting, we can make it their version, And I get nervous, and then he starts getting angry, and I think at that point he's just like, oh, these people are mysteriously in the shadows making this game without me. I don't trust them, because again, I want to reiterate, he was being harassed horrifically at this time. To hear that someone's making a simulator after you've worked this, you're thinking you're going to make this big old thing, and then to hear that someone's snatched the idea from under your nose, but then also didn't tell you about it, and no one else was telling you about it, and now at the worst possible time they're telling you about it, he becomes extremely suspicious, extremely angry, and is like, are the people who are harassing me working on this game? Was this their plan to ditch me and try to take my IP for their own? And I got nervous, and I was like, oh, this is not good, because at the time, again, for the context of the era, I didn't like Aaron at the time. I mean, I still don't agree with some of the things he had done, but I did not like him at this time, because the fandom had kind of grown around this era of not liking Aaron. Again, unjustly. I think my opinions have changed a lot, and I was a kid. I had just turned 18, at the time. I was still learning, so I didn't trust Aaron, and I was like, I'm gonna try to reply to just settle this, I guess, but I don't know what's gonna happen. So I email Aaron after this simulator thing happens, and I'm like, hey, I can work on it, you can help me work on it, but I still want it to be free. I don't want it to be part of a Kickstarter. I was very hesitant. I did not want to make it part of the Kickstarter, because then it would eventually turn into me being an employee of Aaron. And I was like, at the time, for someone I did not like, I did not want to become their employee. And so I was like, oh, can we just work on it for free, and just let this happen? And I think, his next immediate response was justfully, what's your full name? I can't talk to you until I, know who you are. Obviously, to make sure I wasn't, one of the people harassing him. And I didn't want to give my name. I still don't want to give my name. I don't, for my personal reasons, I didn't want to do it. I was willing to work with him if that was possible, but I drew the line at giving my name out because I didn't want my name ever known by someone. And I was worried he was just going to, if I did work with him, accidentally say my full name in a video if he addresses me by my name and in emails and such, and then he accidentally slips it instead of saying my username. I was rightfully terrified by that, so I just didn't email him again. And then he, the comments were still blowing up on his video. I think the comments are still there. It was a shit show. Like, if you go look at that initial simulator video, he might have deleted a few comments, but it was a lot of arguing and such. And he kind of comes back into those comments and is like, I don't know if that was the real person who had emailed me, but reach out if it is still the real you. But I'm already still immediately suspicious by this. It was nerve-wracking. The simulator was not canceled in any way, but it definitely lost a lot of muster as soon as that happened. No one really backed it, but he didn't outright cancel it, and that made all of us extremely nervous. And I was like, well, I guess I'll just keep releasing versions of the game and just see what happens. And so late October, like, it's October 30th that the simulator launch came out. So November was nerve-wracking, and I was releasing all this stuff. I was still having fun, but I was always worried, like, I don't know what Aaron's thinking right now. I don't know what's happening. He's not struck down the Game Jolt page. I don't even know if he knows where the Game Jolt page is, but I'm worried. He releases the Rock-afire replay olive branch video in like mid-November, and he's again trying to give like the, hey, we'll work on the game together, if you just email me, and we'll you'll be able to get paid and stuff. And I just ignored it, and I just continued working on the game and adding what I could, because at that point I was also like, I don't want it to be for money. It would be cool if it can have a lot of good stuff done for money. But the way Aaron had phrased it in the video, he was like, he kind of implied like, you can work on the game and I'll be the director of the game and we'll move forward together on it. And I was just like, I am not someone who likes to work with people. I am still not someone who likes to work with people. I like to collaborate with people, but I do not like having anyone under me. And I knew he was the same way. That's why I still don't collaborate with him to this day. It's because we're both people who have a vision for how we want things to be done, and we want to stick with it, and if anyone says no, we're going to extremely hardly clash. So, especially then when he was like, I will be the director, you will help me work on it, and he was spouting ideas of what he wanted to do, and I was like, oh, I don't want to do that, It led me to just working on the game on my own. And by that point, he was now spouting stuff like, well, I'm just going to continue with my simulator then, you do your thing, and our simulator will be better than yours and in its own way. And I was like, all right, well then hopefully the drama has resolved without me even saying anything, just trying to ignore him and not stir up drama and just let me work on the game. He releases like a video saying like, he's like, it was one where he was like trying to help someone program, and it was really weird because again at the time we did not know what Aaron was thinking about this game. And he posted a video of like someone who was emailing him about how to program in Replay, and he was showing on his actual Rock-afire how he would program a character, which was super cool. And I was like, oh man, Aaron might actually come around to the game and just let me work on it in peace for free without him having to do a single thing, and I can just have fun. But then at the very end of the month, right after this build releases, some videos come out of some show tapes come out with vulgarity in them, one of them mainly being the infamous Ram Ranch. More vulgar things start coming out, and Aaron is rightfully very frustrated that his characters are now being put out for the first time and en masse. There had been, Aaron had made videos of his character swearing, but fans being able to basically put his characters to any audio they want rightfully pissed him off. And so he started making a system where like you had to email Aaron and be a part of a verified group to post fan shows. And this made everyone a little bit more like, okay, I guess it should be fine. Aaron's gonna, try to manage that on his own, and I guess we'll do fine. He's not, trying to touch the game and get it taken down. He did kind of like get very mad at the beginning about that, but he kind of eventually caved and was like, I'll just moderate, the shows that come out. So, I just hunkered down and tried to churn out as many updates as I could, because there was always just still that nervousness of just like, God, Aaron's gonna take this game down at any moment. It's gonna happen. And eventually this game doesn't last that long, but, my immediate thing was like, I need to churn out as many updates as possible to make sure this gets done. And that's why we are here in a new update. As you can see, there's a new outside here. This is the actual parking lot of an abandoned Chuck E. Cheese location. It's in Houston, Texas, I believe. It's on the replay Cheesypedia article. It was to kind of ground this area as a real place, and I spent like a week on this, and it lasted into later things like Fazanum and such with different colors. But I changed one of I forget what it was, like a blue building. I don't remember what it was, but I changed this to like Chuck E. Cheese Avenger colors as a reference of Chuck E. Cheese things to come. Yeah, let's just see what this is. So this is the latest version of the game, and I guess might as well show what the title screen of this looks like. All right, and here is the title screen. With my 4x3 video, I will have to kind of move around here. This was more of the TF2 influence, Team Fortress 2, of this title screen. If you go look at the TF2 title screen, you would immediately see what I'm talking about. This entire thing was designed to look like it. And it also had custom characters. If I were to like go into a different menu and back out, you would get a different character each time. It was every single render of every single costume available. And it was just things like that. I would see that I opened the game like a million times to test things, and other people are opening the game all day long. And I was like, instead of just giving them a boring, title screen, they had to click, the Showtime button every single... I just realized it was a Showtime button. That's the, is that not what was in the FNAF movie? Wow, like 3 years before then. I wanted it to have something fun, and so I had it to where you get a random character every time you play you start up the game. So just things like that. I always wanted to add little things that, was fun for people. It was always just, it was the things was like, I need it to be your personal Rock-afire show. I need it to be educational. I need it to be gamified. I need it to be fun with Easter eggs, stuff like that. There was always just a push for what is the most fun thing I can add to this, or, value-driven thing I can add to this. So, with this last version, and, as it was leading up to this last version, we got stuff like this room, which was originally going to be, as you can see with the yellow walls, this was the indicative kind of space for the Wolfpack 5. I never directly stated it, but I made this area as like a teaser of like, oh, this would be the Wolfpack 5 showroom was, stuff like that, and people would, speculate and stuff. It was fun to like let people again talk, in that Discord server, and see what people thought. It was, I guess it was almost in the same way of Scott Cawthon releasing the teasers on the FNAF website and watching the community freak out. I was inspired by that, and I was like, I want my game to have that kind of, in small ways, that kind of thrill where I'm always updating it constantly, but I'll throw a little thing in there. Even though I'm talking all day long in the server, I'll throw something in there that I'll never talk about, and, what will people think about that? And it was always fun. I guess for completeness, this hallway was originally going to extend to like future showrooms. That was the plan of this little wall right here, for other characters. I don't have like a vague idea of like a space being past this. It's interesting. Like I see these spaces and I'm thinking about the things I was gonna add, not just what was here. But I never got to that point. But yeah, we're now able to go back here, see the new Rock-afire characters. So I was trying to let people have a space for this. Like I envisioned this as I was gonna make this like a tech office or something with like a bunch of reel-to-reel show tapes in it or something. This hallway never changed. I added more characters, not much. So here we have the final iteration of the live editor. This is what kind of made its appearance through Fazanim and other, Rock-afire Replay and all that stuff. Not right, Reel to Reel. This was this is what I meant, that like the October build was where a lot of major things happened, but this build was January. A lot of it looks kind of the same, but this is where a lot of features just kind of became cemented. So now there's like different areas. You could switch to Clunk on this. The last build did come with Uncle Clunk, which was, the rare character. There was barely any mech photos of this guy. This was the hardest dude to make, and I still couldn't complete him because I didn't know what his arm and leg mechs looked like. That's why he looks like this. I would have finished him. I just didn't have enough pictures. But he was fun to have. You could now have an alternative showroom. And I mean, the things got fleshed out. We had a beach bear and such. But this was it by January. We added the sun as well. This was it by January though. This camera stuff, we did add the filters, so now we had more customization. That's what I wanted. Again, just like, what's the funnest thing to add? Let's add a weird filter. So if someone's making a scary FNAF song to upload on YouTube, they can use this weird filter, or the sepia filter if they wanted it to look old. I just wanted to give people tools, almost like, because this is a game, but it's also a production tool in a way. So I wanted to give people production things like a camera filter, the smooth cam, and this very shortly lived black bars, which you can't see because I'm in 4x3, but it makes it 4x3 because I really like 4x3. And then this is all this kind of the same. You could change on stage sounds during this version as well, because I added at some point within this time the ability to hit Rolf's symbol. There we go. If I tap it, it does that. That was to let Rolf actually hit the symbol with his arm, so you could actually make that feature, work, which was really cool. So, but yeah, I mean, that was really what was the last bit of this show. As we entered into that, the majority of what I did in December was not related to this. November was kind of the scary area where I wasn't sure what was going to happen. December was this. I don't want to talk too much about this. I don't want Chuck E. Cheese banging down my door again. But I'll briefly go through. This was the first little Winchester build I had created because I just loved the look of this building. It is still my favorite location. There's just nothing that beats the aesthetic of this place. It is wonderful. I love Winchester. And there was always the implication that I would add the bots one day. I never, especially at the time, I never had an interest in doing that yet. But I just threw it in there. I was like, that's just so unique. Let's just, have people walk around the first little Chuck E. Cheese's. There was neat novelty thing. There was a lot of novelty to this game, and I wanted to just, add a little novel feature like that. But the Christmas update came, added this room, and these are nondescript, not copyrighted. These are just random endos. These don't have any trademark on them. No one sue me, please. I added these. It was just Chuck and Helen, I think, at first, but I mean the random 2 endos, and then I eventually added the rest. But I threw this out on Christmas. This game was mostly just Rock-afire fans. And I was a Rock-afire fan. I didn't care much for Chuck E. Cheese. I thought their songs kind of sucked at the time compared to the Rock-afire. And I mean, Rock-afire does have more adult. It's not adult, but more all ages entertainment. Chuck E. Cheese is a little more corny. But I was like, there's a lot of fans in that server we were in that never joined the roll for for this game because there were Chuck E. Cheese fans. They were just kind of now segmented away from the Rock-afire fans in this server. And I was like, man, if I just make like one character, I can get those people on board for this game too. They deserve a bone. No one's going to make a simulator for their characters if I don't. So I threw their characters in there. And that really brought both halves together for the excitement of simulators, going forward. And I don't know, it was very cool to have that. It was now becoming, as we were entering, late November or late December into January, it was like, this is going to be the game that kind of encapsulates all of animatronic history. You can have all your animatronics as your own personal characters. This game only lasted a few months. Then came Aaron, kind of getting mad about, again, the uncontrollability of the fan shows. Whatever I was doing was fine, in terms of, like, I wasn't disrespecting, his characters. I wasn't making goofy outfits for them to wear or anything. I was sticking the game to as professional and authentic as possible, but the shows were not. It wasn't that bad around that time. I think he just became frustrated just in general at it, that he had no control over the game. It was just this thing that, to him was being churned in the background, and he had no control over. He didn't know what was going to, come out of it or anything. And he made threats. He threatened to sue me. He said a lot of nasty things. I mean, he was being harassed at the time, though he was also harassing me. I got nervous. I was just a college kid. I didn't want to be sued. I was just starting my life. I didn't want to be sued. And so I just pulled the plug on the game. Again, I never said anything to Aaron this entire time except that one email where I was trying to be friendly. I did kind of pull the plug very suddenly because I wanted the backlash to be very extreme, because it was justifiable. I had to pull the plug eventually. But I really did just drop the game, not say anything, just told everyone, hey, it's canceled. And I was like, why it's canceled, but to all the people who didn't know why it was canceled, they were figuring out very quickly what was happening, with what Aaron was threatening. And so, it was in a very abrupt conclusion to this game, though it has continued a lot further. We will get into that in a bit, but to close it out, I ended it in early January. There was a small point, a very small, like, few hours, where I had claimed everybody I was going to turn this game into Pizza Time Player, I think. I was going to name it Pizza Time Player. I was going to gut out the entire Rock-afire section. It'd just be this room and these characters, and I was going to be like, okay, we could just cut out all the Rock-afire stuff and continue with Chuck E. Cheese. But I didn't care about Chuck E. Cheese at the time. I was like, I don't want to work on some Chuck E. Cheese. Oh God, now it's my entire life now. But at the time I did not want to. And I was like, if I can't have what I want out of this, then I don't care. I'm just gonna drop it. So I canceled that. I was like, nah, we're just fully canceling the game. And then this build right here was what people had for simulators for the next, technically, for at least Rock-afire and Chuck E. Cheese content for the next 2 years. There maybe were some mods at the very end of that, but I didn't release source code for this yet. There is now, but I didn't release anything. So, people were just stuck with this version. And this is 1.24.1, so I did, I think at the very end, add, a few bug fixes to help people. I think it was a main, like, programming glitch that really helped people. But otherwise, I just dipped, and people were stuck with this. It was kind of wild to see. But yeah, the game did continue on, though, because I was not personally going to let this simulator die in any sort of way. So I split into two paths. One was turning this game by the end of the month, creating a game called Faz Anim. I was like, well, I've always wanted to make a Five Nights at Freddy's simulator, well, not always, but, in that time, and I'll get more into that if I decide to make a video on the history of Faz Anim. I wanted to make some FNAF stuff, so I was like, okay, I can justify doing FNAF stuff as a way to progress the simulator itself, the under-the-hood engine, and, have something to release at least that I know will not get taken down because Scott's cool. So I threw that out there. That got people, doing that. But at the same time, I never dropped this game. Faz Anim was just a different map inside this game, and it didn't ship with the Rock-afire replay assets. But what I was working on had both games as the same game. I could click a button, and it would swap between them. So, well, actually, I think later it was one button I could swap between them. Early on, I actually had to go back and forth and copy scripts over between each version as I updated the underlying engine code. But I would work on this game, alongside Faz Anim in secret. There was about 4 maybe, that had access to this private build, and this was for about 2 years, I think. But, it was extremely private. It leaked near the end, I think. But for the first while, no, like if you were in this fandom, you only had access to this last version. That was it. But I have now, afterwards, I have released these future versions for people to see, up until the point it becomes reel to reel at some point where it becomes only Chuck E. Cheese characters. So I only released up to the point where there was still Rock-afire in the game. But let's check out version 1.33. All right, and here we are in 1.31, actually, not 1.33. 33 was when the Rock-afire characters were removed. But this is the version, I would say maybe March, probably between March and like July of 2021. This was kind of the last remaining builds of this. It probably didn't get much, I believe. Yeah, nothing here, but I do know there were Fats got added, Beach Bear got his mask, and I think that was mainly it for, characters. Oh, new Rock-afire got some stuff too, I believe. But, where is it? There is supposed to be, what? Hold on. Add this, whoa, what? I am pretty sure, I think they're just hidden until they play. This version had video added to it. It was a late release thing. It was never part of the original update. It was like 1.28 that, got the TVs. They're supposed to appear here. They're just like, video files that just play up on these parts. But it was pretty like revolutionary as the last little bit for this early engine, because a lot of Rock-afire tapes later on got video, and if you wanted to play like Chuck E. Cheese stuff, you needed video as well. And it was that last little dimension to the engine I was missing at the time. It was a really cool thing. Sadly, no one got to see it until 2 years later, but during the private builds, it was the coolest thing ever, because also around this time was when we did get like official data to glance at, so we got to have the videos for that too. Again, most people didn't get to see that till 2 years later. Yeah, we were able to actually start seeing real Rock-afire data and how to... there were little things we added because we realized things were wrong or different that we got to change and fix for future things. But yeah, having video was pretty big. And then, yeah, in the new Rock-afire section, I had continued working on it, I believe. We go here. Yes, this version had... additional little backgrounds and such. I had to recreate some of the things like the TV thing here. This sign actually lights up. It was the first like non-animatronic thing I had to get working, especially also the TV. The TV turns off when the thing spins around. Duke was now getting a shirt that we never got to see, I believe, in the original, and Looney Bird also had his little table. So this was like, this version was as far as replay actually got. You just, and that's what people play nowadays. A lot of like bug fixes were also done. So I believe if people try to play old replay, they play this version now, instead of 1.24.1, because yeah, that one kind of sucks. This one just has more stuff. So, but that was kind of, I think there might be something in the Chuck E. Cheese section. I don't believe so. But yeah, this was the end of replay. This was my development process on this. Yeah, nothing really. I think this would all be the same. Yep, all the same. That was Rock-afire Replay. If you would like, comment down below about the development of this game, if you were here for when the development of it happened, or if you still play it in any of its future iterations that had came out. And I may do a video in a bit on the development history of Fazanim as well, because while this was like an hour-long talk, oh my god, Fazanim is so rich in what happened afterwards. It was a complete continuation of what I had wanted. Like literally, as soon as I canceled this game, I was making another game, and I was rebuilding that audience again, but now with also FNAF fans, because some people didn't want to see FNAF stuff. They were like, all right, I'm just gonna stick with the old simulator. Others kept around because they wanted to see how the simulator did and didn't care it was FNAF stuff. And then there were FNAF fans that were now being introduced to the Rock-afire through Fazanim because they would check on the previous versions, or just be interested in there being a thing to animate Freddy Fazbear in that was an SFM, because I used to be an SFM animator for FNAF stuff. So that was kind of my calling. Of I used to, you know, try to make the robots look accurate on stage in animations, and I was like, oh, now I have a way for people to animate those fakes, you know, stage songs, but make them real, and that was really fun. So, but yeah, that was the development history of Rock-afire Replay. So hope you enjoyed it, and hope you still have fun with all these simulators that have come out nowadays. So I'll see you in the next video.